Good morning, all of you. So after the very insightful session of Professor Sabyasachi, we have come to yet another session on a very, very important topic. I welcome you all to the session 6 on the theme Inquiring Conventional Research Methodology in Social Sciences. In this session, our esteemed speaker will be talking on the topic Feminist Epistemology, a critical outlook to research. My name is Pratish Vibhakar, Assistant Professor of Epistemology at Galgotias University. Gender and feminist epistemology is one of the significant perspectives in research. Women's and gender studies is an ever-changing field of academic inquiry that was born out of women's movement organized in Western societies. A wide range of research is happening in this field. Therefore, it is necessary to understand the nature of feminist epistemology. Introducing Dr. Sheetal Sharma, she is coordinator for Erasmus Plus program, John Monnet Activities 2020, under John Monnet modules titled Institutions, Diversity and Change in the European Union, JNU in New Delhi, from 2020 to 2023, to promote research and innovation in social sciences and European studies. She is presently serving as assistant professor at the Center for European Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has taught the emergence of sociological theory in Europe and methodology of social sciences as the curriculum of the degree program of London School of Economics and Political Science. Dr. Sharma holds a doctorate in sociology. She has completed video lecture series in sociology for CIET as part of NCERT's project, National Repository for Educational Resources and Training. She has also been invited as a discussant on a number of programs on radio and TV. She was awarded JNU Research Excellence Award for outstanding contribution and excellence in the field of social sciences and humanities for the year 2018-19 in the Young Scholars category. She has also been selected for prestigious European Union Visitors Program 2020. European Union Visitors Program is a study visit to Brussels, individually tailored to gain first-hand information on the EU's value, functioning, activities, policies, and perspectives. But before we start, I want to inform you that this session is being recorded and is simultaneously telecasted on Facebook Live and YouTube. The links are given in the Google Classroom as well as on the Telegram channel that you all are part of. This session is of 1 hour, of which last 15 minutes are dedicated to questions and answer. If you have any questions for the speaker, please use that chat feature of Zoom. You may write your questions anytime during the lecture. However, we will hold questions until the end of session, and I will then read questions to Sheetal ma'am as time permits. I will request Sheetal ma'am if she could provide some references for further reading, as that would be beneficial. And also because like in all the previous speakers, like there were requests of the same kind. So without taking much of your time, may I please welcome Dr. Sheetal Sharma to deliver her lecture. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Pratyush, for introducing me to the audience. I'm going to speak for 40-45 minutes and then 10-15 minutes for the discussion. The topic for discussion today is feminist epistemology, a critical way to understand or incorporate this epistemology in research. Now, let me begin by asking you certain questions which are related to, and some of the things I mentioned yesterday in my inaugural keynote speech about the faculty development program. And we have a group of scholars and faculty members, those who are practicing, teaching or anything for that matter, research or understanding the world or analyzing the world. Now, what is feminist epistemology? To begin with, I would first begin with the question that what is epistemology, first of all, because we are into research. And you remember the 4 questions: what we do, how we do, why we do, and for whom we do. Okay, what, why, how, and whom. What and why? What is the subject matter of your study? That is, this is the topic under investigation. Say, for example, caste, impact of COVID, gender equality, economic development, globalization, secularization, it can be anything, is what aspect of your study. And I'll ask all of you, being a research scholar or a teacher, please imagine your respective area of interest in your mind as I ask you to imagine few things. Okay, your questions, your concepts, the notions, the interrelationship between variables. The second question is why you do this? Because you are going to produce knowledge in society. Okay, if not knowledge, at least you remember this duster I showed you yesterday. This duster is totality of reality or fact. However, it may be possible that so far people have been able to perceive it only from these two dimensions. So what am I going to do? I'm going to look at this duster from a different angle or a different perspective. Very simply. And how am I going to do it is epistemology. That is how I know who is speaking. Say, for instance, if I click onto my gallery view, I see 46 participants. How I know who is listening to me? Can I request you to switch on your camera and see that, yes, XYZ is listening to me? How I know that what I know? This is epistemology. And I tell you one thing very honestly, that when we talk about research methodology, in different disciplines and among social sciences, there has been a varying degree of emphasis upon research methodology. Say, for example, being a sociologist and a student of sociology, we were given a heavy dose of research methodology. In political science, there is a bit less as compared to sociology. In economics, there is a different way of teaching research methodology. In some other social sciences, in fact, there is no consistency in terms of emphasis being put on research methodology. So how do I make sense of the world? How do I understand the world out there? Because the world is complex. It's not a simple world. And the complexity grows further and further as we act, interact, engage with the world. So how I know is the epistemological question. And to you, as a teacher, as a researcher, I would suggest you to make this understanding of the process of how as simple as possible for your students or for the people whom you are interacting with. Don't make things complex so that it is not discernible, it is not understandable easily by the people whom you are interacting with. There is no need to emphasize upon the epistemic boundaries of the ontological realities have to be discerned through a paradigm which is non-scientific. And absolutely not. Is the student going to understand all this, the person who has not been through a rigorous course in research methodology? And now MPhil is also undone. MPhil is also done away with. So how do you make sense of the world? How do you understand? A scholar who has just graduated at the level of just doing the coursework, the readings, okay, 15 readings for this particular semester, for this particular, how is the person going to understand the nuances? But at the same time, research methodology, if understood very simply, it makes our life, our analysis ability, our interpretation very simple. So how you understand the world is also the process that how you make others also understand this. So how do you know what you know has to be simply put into the words, which may philosophically be called as epistemology. But when you talk about it, and the way I'm going to tell you about it is very simple, that how you produce knowledge, how do you look at the world from a different perspective, how I know the world is like this. Epistemology. And what is then feminist epistemology is that we'll use example of feminism. Now, to begin with, the package called as research methodology is different from research methods. This is very simple, and I expect all of you know the difference between methodology and method. But to put it simply, still I'm understanding that some of you are at the initial stages of understanding. Can you see my screen? Can you see the board? Anyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Research methodology. I write methodology here completely. Methodology is equal to, okay, combination of three important things. First is ontology plus epistemology, and then your methods. This is the equation which must be there in your mind. When you say that what is research methodology, it's a complete package of ontology, epistemology, and methods. And this is what is the difference between methodology and method. Method is just 1/3 component of the entire package called as research methodology. So what are the other two things? One is ontology and the other one is epistemology. And these three things are intricately related to one another. Now, let me begin by asking you something related to ontology. How do we perceive the world? Ontology is simply defined as a philosophy concerning nature of reality, that what is my vantage point to look at the world outside? How am I perceiving the world? What are the factors or actors or driving forces that are influencing the composition of the world? Say, for example, imagine your society, imagine your village, your city, your town, wherever you are located in this place right now. Imagine the changes that have happened over a period of time. All of you are 20 plus. I can ask you to really go back 10 years in the timeline and imagine the development. Now, when you see some changes occurring, what are these changes? Some changes are observable. Some changes are not observable, but seen in terms of their consequences. So what reasons, what actors and factors do you attribute to these changes is the way you understand the world. Say, for example, you may make a statement, ये तो बहुत modern हो गया है, ये गांव बहुत modern हो गया है, यहाँ शहरीकरण हो गया है, this place has become urban. Now, if I visit your place 10 years later, at one point of time in history, and now say, ma'am, ab yahan sab kuch milta hai. There is a change that has happened. How do you perceive this change? What are the reasons that you attribute to this change? What is your worldview? How, through what lens or prism you are understanding the change? If it is in an individual, okay, he went to the hostel, he went abroad and he got exposed to a new way of life. And this is what is that he is modernized, he is westernized, he has opened up, he has become more liberal in his thinking. The vantage point through which you want to understand the world is the ontological reality. One famous debate in ontological reality is between the structure and the action. How do you look at the world? Is the structuralist or the action perspective? If I perceive the relationship between the individual and the world in a top-down approach, in a deterministic fashion, that institutions determine my being, I am primarily a structuralist. Say, for example, when we say that society is made up of number of institutions, religion is an institution, language is an institution, politics is an institution, marriage is an institution, family is an institution, and n number of institutions. I may like or not any of these institutions. I may believe in them or not. I may reject them or not. But the existence of the institution is over and above my existence, and they tend to determine my behavior. So if I am not religious, I am a-religious, but I cannot do away with the word called as religiosity. If I am a bachelor, I am unmarried. Somehow the system, the social structure, the social institution tend to determine your being, your existence. That is primarily a structuralist perspective. If I have to communicate with you, I have to use a particular language or a set of words that is understandable by the community whom I am interacting with. So the presence of language as an institution which is facilitating communication. The structuralists tend to analyze the world from this perspective, that structures are out there. They have an objective reality or existence of their own. They are to be understood as determining my individual's behavior. And hence, the system is determining the existence, the structuralist approach. Whereas the constructivists, those who emphasize on agency, they tend to see that what this system or society is made up of. So they look at the individual entities and their smaller or greater role in determining or shaping the structure. Although, of course, we enter into debates between structuralism and constructivism. However, it is just an issue of the vantage point. From where am I looking at the world? Is it from the constructivist perspective, this side of the duster, or is it this side of the duster that I use to rub the board? This is actually, the reality is a mix of both these perspectives. So one ontological debate, how do I look at the world, is from this perspective. The second is between your famous sociologist Weber and Karl Marx. The materialistic conception of history, that material has determined the nature of life and living. The second one is the idealist perspective, that is, ideas have brought about change in society. Here, dialectics, or the material conception and their idea and their implementation. The third important debate, ontological debate, happens to be the same piece of reality understood from two other vantage points, consensus and conflict. The functionalist, those who perceive that, once again, remember this, Duster, that religion plays an important unifying role in society, the positive aspect of religion. The conflict perspective on the other side says, no, religion is a divisive force. So what is ontology? Ontology is the reality out there. How we perceive this reality is different for different people. And that is why we have ontological debates. However, debates are just there to sensitize you about various aspects of reality. They may be competing at one point of time, but they all are present in major or minor percentage or proportion. Now, depending on your ontology, how you perceive the world, from which vantage point, is your epistemology. Now, what is epistemology? Epistemology is the philosophy concerning that how I know what I know. Now, how do I understand this statement? This is a very simple statement. You start with this language, you Google it, and you will find that this is a philosophy concerning how I know what I know. But what do I mean by this? How I know what I know? Can you please ask somebody to mute the mic?
Manjeet, please put everyone on. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Fine. There was a lot of disturbance. So depending upon the ontological standpoint, we have our epistemological positions. Now, simply stating, one of the epistemologies is the way I understand or I make sense of the world. Say, for example, how I know that this is hot? By touch, through my senses. This is empiricism. How I know that Dr. Apeksha is listening to me? By seeing. Okay. How do I know that there is something is burning? Through smell. The ways in which your senses tend to capture the reality, that is empiricism. How am I feeling the world? How am I understanding the world? And empiricism gained prominence, too much of prominence, during the era of enlightenment. And there's a reason behind it. The reason is that for a long period of time in European society, people were believing so much on the unseen aspects of reality, and they tend to consider it as the God's will, that once they started rejecting, we will not believe in what we cannot see, they started emphasizing on actually believing in seeing. So seeing is believing. If I have not seen God, I will not believe in God. If I have not seen God's magic, I will not believe in God. But what I can see, this is water and I can touch it. This is hot, I can see it. But empiricism is not the only way to understand or make sense of the world or gather knowledge. There are other ways also. And those are the other epistemologies. The other one is the perception or the experience. One is the physical one. The other one is the experience of a phenomena. Say, for instance, if this is a piece of wax, okay? This wax has certain size, shape, volume, color, everything. It is weighed in grams right now. It can be preserved on a piece of paper or everything like that, which is that this is solid. It's one of the state of the matter. Now, suppose I bring this wax closer to a candle or a heating object. I heat it. Over 2-3 minutes, this wax will lose all its original properties and it will acquire a different form of matter, that is, from solid, it will become liquid. It will now be measured in liters. It cannot be stored on a paper. It has to be stored in a container. It can evaporate, convert into the third state of matter, and it is no longer that easily holdable because now it's hot. It can burn my fingers. But if I ask Apeksha, what is this? She will say, ma'am, it's wax. But what has undergone this? That from completely one stage to the second stage is the phenomena of heating. And that is what is the understanding of phenomena. And you don't need to understand the phenomena every time. It's not that every day I get up in the morning and remind myself, oh, I am a teacher, I have to act very disciplined and this. No, it's an automatic pilot. It's a phenomena. It's understood. The status is such, the role is such, the expectation is such, and we discharge our duties. So that is a phenomena. That is how you reify something. So you say that a wax after melting is phenomena. Water after condensation is a phenomena. Process of globalization is getting connected to the world is a phenomena. Process of secularization, a phenomena of any type has undergone this and changed the property of this. So my town has become more modern and everything is available now because I am perceiving it from a materialist point of view that availability of XYZ is considered to be as becoming modern and catching up with the global trends. That is how you perceive the world through certain phenomena. The third way of understanding the world is through analogy or metaphysics. Now, analogy is very interesting and you can take it up to many levels. First is imagine a cow. Okay, all of you imagine a cow. Now I would say imagine a cow, simple cow against a wild cow. All right. So what is the difference between this analogy? Here you are interpreting that what is a wild cow as against a one. But if you haven't seen both of them, you may not be able to imagine. Okay, now let's add one more thing to it. A cow, a wild cow, and a holy cow. All right. So imagine these three types of cows. What are you doing? You are applying your mind into metaphysical entities and creations of certain ideal types. And this is what Weber is doing by creation or interpretation of a particular phenomena along with the deviations of the ideal type from the reality or reality from the ideal type. Whichever way you talk about it, it's about analogies and interpretations. So say, for example, if this is a wall, all right? If this is a wall and there is a man moving behind this wall with a cap on his head, this cap, and only cap is seen right now. You can see just the cap of the man. So will you say that cap is moving on its own? No, you know that somebody is wearing the cap and that is why you can see only the cap and you know that the height of the man is 5 feet. Cap is further 6 inches up on his head and the wall is 5 feet. Hence only cap is visible. You can't say that cap is moving on its own because here this is application of logic. Then you have reasoning and implications. Okay. That X is a man, X is out of home, which means X is alive. So that's the reasoning. आप लोग कितने करते हैं question entrance examination में all men are mortals, mortals are men, hence Hari is a mortal and Hari is a man. These are implications, reasonings, and connections that you establish among things and other people. So you have empiricism, seeing is believing. You have realism, that is, how do you see the things happening in terms of their consequences? That is photosynthesis, one such example, which is not observable directly, but is observable in terms of its consequences. So second is application of phenomena, reason, or realist epistemology. Then the third one is analogy, metaphor. And then there is a kind of inferences drawn, which is reasoning and implications. And then another way of looking at the world is to constitute or attach meanings and motives. Say, for example, this is simple H2O. For a person using this water in chemistry lab, he can break it down into hydrogen and oxygen atoms, and this is simple H2O. The moment I say this is Ganga Jal, it acquires a different meaning altogether. Okay? So I am understanding this water not just from its composition perspective, but I am understanding this water from its cultural meaning or perspective. Okay, and the social world is full of these cultural meanings, the way we understand the world. See, for example, in everyday life, red light is not just an optical illusion or a phenomena. कि ये कभी लाल हो गई, कभी green हो गई, कभी orange हो गई. We attach a meaning to this color, and the whole world operates on the basis of this color. Red means stop, green means go, orange means you can wait, look for. Similarly, you can say it's in linguistics. It's very interesting in literature and linguistics and kavita likhne mein, you know, कि जैसे in Hindi sometimes you say कर कमल, यानी आपके हाथ कमल समान है. For a doctor, my body is my body, which is made up of certain, this is epidermis, this is skin, this is bone and all. But a person can see a kamal or a lotus in this, kar kamal. Madhur Vani. Similarly, when you attach smell like a rose, and the smell is sweet. Now, to a child, a sweet is a toffee and a rose is a flower. And if you say smelling sweet, okay, they smell sweet, kaise kehti hai? Because these are two complex concepts. How do you relate them? So this complexity requires a kind of interpretation of the reality. How do you understand the world? And lastly, the epistemology, although of course there are many of them, but I'm bringing some of them down for you. Then the epistemology is that why do you want to create this knowledge? The first Habermas says that the first reason or intent of creation of knowledge is for techno-rational superiority. Okay, and this is primarily structuralist perspective, that you acquire knowledge in order to establish a kind of authority. But this knowledge, as I heard Sabyasachi sir was talking about this creation of knowledge, and knowledge is power. This power is only a goal that you acquire through knowledge. But knowledge is not a goal, it's a means to acquire something which is for your own satisfaction, to make sense of the world, rather than to achieve knowledge, exploit or suppress others. But knowledge in the modern scientific, rational, technocratic world is understood as a source of authority. Like if I become engineer, I'll become top brass. If I become this, and archaeology of knowledge and knowledge is power, all those concepts, they talk about dominance of knowledge as a way of commanding and exploiting people. This is what colonialism has done. The second aspect of knowledge is knowledge as primarily hermeneutic in nature, to make sense of the world. So sweet smell, although of course both are quite distinct from each other, but how do I connect them in terms of hermeneutics, in terms of context, in terms of making sense of phenomena, that the person is trying to relate it to something which is exotic. The person is trying to relate it to something which is irrelatable, yet he's finding beauty in that. So hermeneutic, context specific, subject-centric knowledge. And the third one is, Habermas says, is emancipatory or critical knowledge, which is for the progress of society, to liberate people from particular institutional structures and be critical of the existing, taken for granted nature of the social world. And this can be Marxism or feminist epistemology, which is critical in nature, epistemology, that why I am saying something about women. What is the source of knowledge? Is this experience? Is this empirical? Is this something which is interpretation? Is this analogy? So, Nari as pair ki juti. Look at the analogy. Look at the way they are comparing it with an object. And that is where knowledge, the way words are being used, the way concepts are being made, global north, global south. It is not just a direction or the axis of globe, north and south. The moment you say south and north, they acquire a different meaning. developed Western capitalist liberal world order dominating countries, and the other one South, empty belly, poor, underdeveloped, undernourished, malnourished. This a whole lot of plethora of features get related to this global North and global South. So when you say pair ki juti, you immediately tend to think about that you are talking about a particular level to which women have been treated in society. So what is my vantage point of understanding is the feminist epistemology. And what is feminism? Feminism is experience of women. And what is experience of women? That look, there is something called as gender, which is not something which is naturally constructed, but is socially constructed. Yes, of course, there are biological differences, but the biological differences may be minor and they have been extrapolated so much, blown so much out of proportion that for 5,000 years, the women have been suppressed. And now we need to look at the world from feminist perspective, feminist epistemology. And no matter how I know what I know, by seeing on the streets or believing or looking at the metaphors that have been used for women, or trying to understand that why a woman does not come back to her job after marriage or after childbirth. That is, you remember this man moving behind. I don't need to ask her. I know that what is the phenomena, or something as, holy cow, the labels, the stereotypes, the expectation, the gender statuses, everything is completing the package called as feminist epistemology, which tends to help us to look at the world that gender is a social construction. Look at the world from a female's perspective. It is not something very difficult, but it is the experience of the individual, that how do they operate and interact in everyday life, which is full of certain structuralist perspective or notions of patriarchy, which are considered to be taken for granted. And this is what is the essence of feminist epistemology, that we have to break the molds or the constructions. Somebody was asking about, how do you challenge the social? How do you challenge the taken for granted nature of the world? You have to break it down into the pieces. If you look at a car, it's a very big, even if you look at anything, any gadget which is around you, a transistor or a table or your laptop or your computer, it functions only because all these parts in this gadget are related to one another, and they're functioning. Anything that goes wrong would create a trouble with your instrument or with your equipment. But imagine to a person who has not seen this gadget, and you just unpack all these individual components and put them in a bag and hand it over to the person. And you say, what is this? He'll say, I don't know. I haven't seen this thing in my life. Maybe to me also, if there is no screen, and if you have 40, 50 small components and parts, and you say, ma'am, what it can be? I may say, oh, it can be a mobile phone, or it can be a transistor, or it can be a walkie-talkie, anything. But parts in themselves sometimes do not make sense. But when they come together, when they form a equipment or a gadget or a society or an organic whole, they tend to reflect. And that's what is gender. In isolation, biological difference do not make any sense, other than a couple of differences of having birth or fertility. But beyond that, if gender, independent of its all negative stereotyping and connotation, if two people are driving and you do not know which car is being driven by whom. See, for example, there was something which came from the first women pilot in India. She said the machine that we are flying does not know that who is flying it. The plane does not know that who is operating it, a male or a female. It is the people, those who are sitting in it, they tend to construct a meaning ki acha lady pilot hai. And for a long period of time, the machines do not, and they will never ever come to know that who is driving them, who is riding them, by flying them or driving them. But it is the people, those who are part of it. That is what what is the complexity of situation, the interpretation when gender is gendered in the negative sense. that there is a difficulty. And this is why our knowledge, our society, our functions, our interactions are all gendered, and we tend to see it like that. Now, quickly coming to feminist epistemology and wo aaya kaise, I'll take you back to the history of waves of feminism. Feminism might have existed for a long period of time. If you talk about Indian tradition, you have single mothers and all that. Even all across the world, also women have fought for their rights and all these things. But formal shape of feminism came into existence through three waves: the first, the second, and the third. And the first wave, you do not have any concrete date that 8th of October 1847 it started. Absolutely not. That's roughly an era where after the era of enlightenment, there were questions regarding assertion of women's rights, and which got great prominence during the French Revolution when it was declared as the rights of man. So where are women? Women played an important role in French Revolution. Nobody acknowledged their role, nobody acknowledged their contribution, their function in society. And then when the write-up comes, it says the rights of man, Declaration of Rights of Man. Now, where are women? The first wave of feminism was dominated by this very basic question: my identity. Me as an individual to be recognized, to vote. हम लोग कहते हैं, to India it came very easily. With independence, we got universal suffrage. But world over, in Western countries particularly, they fought very hard to gain their rights to vote. And why vote? Because you are to be treated as an individual. Ki main hoon, look at me. I'm existing in the society. You're talking about voting, you're talking about rights, you're talking about competence, you're talking about bureaucracy. But where am I? Treat me as an equal citizen. And why citizenship was important? Because citizen was identified as one of the units of society. It wasn't a community. Just like monarchy, he is the person who is dominating, ruling over a community or a society. No, the modern democracies were designed, in terms of one individual, 1 unit plus 1 unit plus 1 unit, complete nation. And this is where individual unit mattered, and they said, we want to fight for our political right. The second wave of feminism was around 1950s post-World War era. In fact, it started before World War also, and during the two World Wars. Imagine a situation that you say in World War I and II, Europe was engaged in bitter war. The population was never ever so high. The environment is hostile. You produce only 6 months or 7 months in a year. Industrialization was taking place. But at the same time, millions of men died during World War I and World War II. So who managed the society? Who managed the show economically? Who was running the industry? All the contribution and majority of the contribution was being made by women. Like when you talk, if I can equate this situation, that when farmers' agitation was going on, when men were sitting here, who was managing the agricultural land and farms? It was women. So if World War is going on, who was managing the home? Who was managing the industry? Who was managing or running the show? It was, if not all, but majority of women were part of the economic system. But when the world got independent, the Cold War started, 1950s, majorly colonialism collapses. Then women had to fight, just like the political right earlier, ki identify me as an individual. Then they had to fight, ki please pay me equal to the work that I'm doing, equal to the man. So it was a quest for economic independence, equality, and also recognition of economic contribution. So all those debates of wages, domestic work to be treated in national income, this, all the aspects of the work, the life, the experience, the education, everything, second wave, primarily dominated by economic questions. It's not that purely, but primarily dominated first by political, second by your economic quest. The others were there, but primarily the motive was this. The third was more so postmodern world, when you say postmodernity and other things have set in. And somehow all the societies have gone up to a level of economic maturity and independence and assertion. Now comes the stage when you start questioning the very fundamentals of patriarchy and say that, look, I've got political right. May to certain extent got economic equality. What about my individuality? My ability to control my fertility, my choices, my purse, my decision making, my choice to marry whom, my choice to work or not, my choice to have children or not. That's the third wave where the identity issue and assertion of being a woman came into existence. And then the fourth one is is involving the other genders also and the preferences and all other things. That is yet to mature. But in all these 3-4 stages, when you talk about, you are primarily talking about that how among women all across the world, the concerns have been same, that patriarchy somehow from various sources and through various resources somehow oppresses women, and we need to come out of it. So what is it trying to tell us? Feminist epistemology is trying to enlighten us about the fact that women have been left out. They have been excluded from the process of development or from getting mainstream. Then there are unconscious attempts. People do not even know that this is exploitation or oppression, because the socialization is such that they tend to think that this is natural, this is taken for granted, this is how the world has, the operating system is such, and this is by design, that this is going to happen. Then the control over the positions of power, control over resources, everything that a small family reflects the patriarchal relation gets magnified at the societal, national, and international level. In institutions, in organization, in management, in politics, in economy, in industry, on road, in streets, in debates, in discussion, everything that gets reflected here gets magnified here, because society is sum total of all the individual parts. And this is what is this. And then you have a kind of system which perpetuates itself. And to make this feminism more nuanced in the sense, there were different ways in which feminists started understanding the world. And these are called as strands of feminism. You have liberal, but all these strands of feminism, before I start talking about various things, they talk about two things: the causes of suppression, oppression, and inequality, and also the solution. So all these feminist groups, whether liberal feminism, radical feminism, Marxism, Marxist feminist, Black feminist, or post-colonial feminism, whatever, they all talk about source of oppression or the sources of inequality, and also the solutions that can undo these inequalities. But unfortunately, there are very divergent positions among women feminist groups as well, and that is why they have not been so successful, because globally the issues and concerns are very different among different category of women. For Black women, it is something which is a double discrimination by men and then discrimination by women of fair color. So for tribal women, it's a different kind of operating system in which they operate. For liberal, the solutions are mild and soft. For radical, the solutions have to be grave and cutthroat kind of things. So there is no commonality of the way they want to tackle the evil called as patriarchy. But then, yes, of course, they have their voice, which in summary can be said that they fight for women's causes. Now, coming to epistemology, and then the third component of the equation, ontology plus epistemology plus method. Now, how do I understand, or how do I look at the world? Now, here I'll introduce certain components to you, and for a while, can I request a chat box function is alive?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. It's
okay.
Live. Yeah.
Now, suppose I take one example, and we will discuss this example to make sense of feminist epistemology altogether. I ask all of you to give me one way in which you can measure empowerment. All of you, please write in the chat box quickly, as many of you can write. What do you mean? This is what is your understanding, that how do I measure empowerment of women, particularly here? Yes, Sucheta wrote, where are we? Okay. Now I'm going to read it. Education, literacy, political representation, financial integration, freedom, make choices, education, control over life, work, decision-making, workforce participation, workforce representation, quality, dignity, respect, mental state, visibility, control over decision, make her speak for herself, provide opportunity, empowerment, mental freedom. Anything else? Self-esteem. Okay. Good. लिखते जाओ, सोचते जाओ. Your mind must not start. And this is how we will produce knowledge also. आज देखो हम knowledge produce करेंगे. हम लोग कैसे? How do we actually? हम कहते हैं ना knowledge produce की कैसे की? ये तो हमें पता ही नहीं है. How do we do it? है ना? So this is how we will think about that. How knowledge is collectively produced. और हम ये 100-150 लोग बैठ के knowledge produce करें. Allow women to wear the dresses they want. Freedom of choice, giving right, freedom, mobility, financial independence. ठीक है? Now, let me bring all this on this board. It cannot be measured, but it has certain agreed upon indices of empowerment, Divya, awareness of self. Okay. Now, suppose what comes out of this, out of the answers that I'm getting here, not being judged. Suppose first is education, then is your income, then all of you are talking about decision making, then most of you are talking about identity, which includes your self-worth and decision and control over individual's environment. So this is decision making, education, self-awareness, and your cannot be measured, but it has to be measured क्योंकि हमें पढ़ना तो है भाई, measure तो करना ही है. Freedom of mobility, financial independence, independence in terms of what you wear, and all these things. These are the ways you measure. Suppose you can also keep on adding to it, but let's stop somewhere here and move to next step. Now, this is, and among all these answers that you have also noted, please note, everybody note it down. Liberation from patriarchy to koi aur hi dilwayega. Digital empowerment, inclusion, reduction. Okay, that is with technology. Participation, political participation, and all these things. Now, among all these variables that you have mentioned here, some of the variables are easily observable. Say, for example, if I draw a graph, women in 1950s, the enrollment ratio is here and it's going up, 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 up. Observable, external, easily measurable variable. So what kind of methods you use here? Primarily statistics and quantitative methods. Okay, am I right? Is it clear? Fertility, women's fertility has been going down, so which means indirectly the decision making to have as many children, or according to the choice of the family ki ladka nahi hua hai, so you keep on producing girls, this is going down, hence decision making is going up. Okay, you interpret the data. Political participation of women, another graph is like this. So just visual impact shows that there is a rise in political participation. Economic participation of women, say for example, in 1950s, it was somewhere here. So it started late, but now it is this. This can be broken down into government jobs, corporate sector, this. So hence this is quantitatively be visible, externally measurable variables that you see that are operating. But some of your variables may have to be understood in an indirect fashion. That is sweet smell. Okay? They are not easily measurable. This is hot. Touch nahi hai. वो simple observation. The observed reality is not the real reality. ठीक है? तो वो कैसे समझेंगे? That requires an interpretation. वो टोपी वाला. अब उसको करते हैं हम. Suppose if you identify all these variables quantitatively, Sheetal is educated, she has income, she has decision making, she has identity, she is digitally sound, technologically participation. Is Sheetal empowered as per your assessment, observable variables? Apeksha, am I empowered or Apeksha is empowered? Yes? Pratyush?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm empowered. Free of thinking of guilt. Yes. I'm empowered because I check all these boxes. All these boxes of quantitatively, externally observable variables. So when I walk on a street, people say, "Oh, look, this lady is so empowered. She looks empowered." Let's wrap it up in a small story. So it's just a metaphysical analogy. Not real. Don't consider this to be something which is real. Now, my husband asked me to make some good food for his friends, those who are coming. I said, no, please. My FDP starts tomorrow and I have to prepare. Keynote speaker is also not coming and I have to take the stage. Please spare me. So there is a nok-jok, there is a fight and he hits me and I get a cut here on my forehead. No problem. All right. I get up next morning, put some makeup, sit for the FDP and all these things. But after the FDP, my maid comes to my room and she starts sweeping the room very quickly. And she's, "Ma'am, Shantabai, what has happened to you? Ma'am, I'm in terrible anger today." I go, "What happened?" "My husband yesterday said, make something good for me." So I said, "Acha, what happened then?" She said, he said, make something. My friends are coming, this and that. And I refused because I had other works to do. So I said, "What happened then?" Then she said, "We had a fight." अब मुझे थोड़ा सा अपना हिस्ट्री याद आ रहा है कल रात का. So I said, "Sin, what happened?" Then he hit me. Now तो पूरा का पूरा scene वही चल रहा है. So then I said, "What happened then when he hit you?" I slapped him back. And then I said, "Okay." Then she said, "फिर क्या था? पीटा? पुलिस में रिपोर्ट किया?" And सारी रात अंदर रहा, सुबह तीर की तरह सीधा होके बाहर आया. And then she looks at me, "मैडम, ये तुमको इधर क्या हुआ?" So मैंने कहा, "शांता भाई, I slipped in the bathroom." Now, let's come back to this board. Shantabai does not check any of these boxes the way Sheetal does. But when it comes to assertion, resistance, okay, expression, the experience, where is Sheetal? I may be one unit in this graph somewhere here. Am I right? I may be a unit existing here. जैसे वो क्रिकेट में दिखाते ना, क्रिकेट में वो कहाँ गिरा विकेट. I may be that unit here. But where is Sheetal? The meaning of empowerment got lost in all this under a single slap, and Shantabai showed me the mirror. This is empowerment. Are you empowered? This is experience. This is feminist epistemology. How you enter, how you experience the world. So all the reliable indicators of government of India which made Sheetal as empowered are on validity scale 0. So what do you say? You have to think about it. That how am I going to measure empowerment? And this is how we produce knowledge. अभी हम सब ने एक भेजा ना indicator, और हम सबको 2 3 भी आते होंगे. But you were not aware of the story that is going to be told to you. Storytelling. ये interesting way है to relate to a thing, to relate to a situation. This is how you can actually develop interest among your students to understand, look at the world, not from, वो duster कहाँ गया? ये duster बार लाऊंगी. Not from a single dimensional perspective, because this was saying that Sheetal is empowered. But इसको उल्टा किया, तो there was a 0 marks. And अगर empowerment उस नजर से देखे, तो Shantabai is absolutely on the top and Sheetal marks 0. और अगर इधर से देखें, तो this is this and this is this. But the fact is that, once again coming to duster, if Shantabai exists at this side, Sheetal exists at this side. And this is how you have to make the world discernible. This is how I know what I know. Not just through visibly listed observable indicators, but also feminist epistemology where involvement of women and her experience is acknowledged. That look, don't list me as an epitome, a murti of empowerment by saying कि मैंने क्या achieve किया, क्या नहीं किया, मुझे इतना लाख salary मिला, इतना power मिला, इतना prestige मिला. If I am not able to exercise my choice, express myself, the more I've gone up ना एक और way है to understand the world. There is a very simple way of explaining the relationship. A is directly related to B. Education is directly related to empowerment, which is indirectly related to expression. है ना? So education ने empower कर दिया, दोनों up गए, indirectly zip your mouth. Tomorrow there'll be a story in the newspaper, domestic violence against a professor in JNU, and JNU is like this and that, and all those. My institution will also be dragged into the entire story. And this, how do I make sense of this? So these are a kind of law-like generalization of society. To know, you remember Auguste Comte? To know is to predict, and to predict is to control domestic violence. This is simple. You need to, all my young teachers, my young colleagues out there, look, the world has to be, हमारे स्टूडेंट्स क्या है, अब हम किताब पढ़ने का जमाना नहीं रहा है ना, किंडर विंडर सब पढ़ के सुना देता है तुम्हें. इवन इफ यू डोंट वांट टू रीड विद योर आईज, जस्ट ऑडियो ऑन करो, बैठ के आराम से सुनो. कोई क्या करेगा, क्या कर रहे हो, कि पढ़ रहा हूँ, वही वैक्स वाला कि ये वैक्स है. पढ़ रहा है, पढ़ कैसे रहा है तेरा, तुम उस चुप पे आंखें बंद है, मतलब सुन के पढ़ रहा हूँ. So the ways in which we are connecting to reality are undergoing transformation. So is the way we are going to teach to our students. अब वो जमाना नहीं रहा कि पहले खोल के पुस्तक वहां से लग जाए. हाँ ठीक है, I understand when you have to cover a lot of syllabus, sometimes 1 or 2 classes have to be, made in terms of reading, understanding the text, or capture the essence of the reading that you are teaching and all these things. But more often than not, please break down the concepts for your students into simple components so that they understand. You don't have to talk about the epistemic regime of ontological realities has to be understood in terms of the methodological debates and paradigm. Absolutely not, beta. Mere bouncer ja rahi hai, tumhe kya samajh mein aayegi? The young minds. So one of the development of a faculty is that to put it simply to the person. और अब इसमें हमारा वो लास्ट वाला सवाल कहाँ गया? रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजीज, ऑन्टोलॉजी प्लस एपिस्टेमोलॉजी प्लस मेथड्स. तो मेथड्स की लिमिटेशन यहाँ पे उजागर हो गई. कैसे हो गई? कि आई वॉज मेजरिंग एम्पावरमेंट क्वांटिटेटिवली एंड आई कैन ऑल्सो मेजर एम्पावरमेंट क्वालिटेटिवली. तो एक मैं आपको लास्ट बताती हूँ, लास्ट 5 or 2 minutes, that when I talk about methods primarily, draw this graph. Okay, on this graph put quantitative put secondary methods here and primary here. Okay, and quantitative here and qualitative data here. ठीक है, ये सारे आपको ग्राफ को पता है, x dash y dash x dash y dash वाला कर लो. ठीक है. So some of the methods are secondary in nature and quantitative, such as official statistics, records, data tabulation. जो ये हमारा था ना ग्राफ वाला, graphic representation, everything is here quantitatively in the secondary sources से. So आपका census है, records है, आपके websites हैं, details about literacy, about death rate, birth rate, जो भी, whatever can be there. ठीक है. When you move from this side and we go anti-clockwise, ठीक है. So from 1 you come on to second quadrant. This is quantitative plus primary. So how will you conduct and collect this data? You will use survey as a research design, and you will use closed-ended questions, structured interviews, structured questionnaire, and all these things, structured questionnaire, schedules, structured interviews, and all these things. So here you collect your primary data, which is quantitative in nature. जैसे आपका feedback form है ना, which is primary data, but primarily yes, no, can't say, you are giving pre-coded. अब किसी को कहना है कि अच्छा और बुरे के बीच में क्या है, तो यार तुमने तो वसीम, तुमने बॉक्स ही नहीं दिया लिखने के लिए, है? You have given a pre-coded. अब खाना या तो you like it very hot या mild या cold था, अब बीच का था 45% का, तो क्या करूंगा मैं, है ना? So but primarily the methods are giving you this much of freedom to operate. Come from this to this. यहाँ पे क्या होगा? You use ethnography as research design, and then you have participant observation, unstructured interviews, observation in the natural setting. So this is primarily and qualitative. अब वो last का आपका feedback form में एक खाना, others. If you have any other suggestion about the feedback form, that is this khanna, this box, where you are free to express what you intend to talk about the things, or your opinion, your expression, true expression about what do you intend to write. And finally, this is qualitative and secondary, about the diaries, historical records, archives, personal letters, which are qualitative but already existing. So for history, you tend to dig all these things. Now, if I go empowerment wise, women are getting empowered in India. Women are getting empowered to a certain extent. People, those who qualify on the index of empowerment may not be as empowered as here. And look at Diana's life history. The most celebrated name, feminism, beauty, everything at her disposal. Inside, hollow. So still things come out. Diaries, personal records, letters, and all these things. So what is the sum total of this small chart? That when you move anti-clockwise, listen to it very carefully and I'll repeat it. When you move anti-clockwise, the reliability reduces and validity increases. Okay? Reliability क्या है वो अभी आज टाइम नहीं बचा है, otherwise वो भी समझाती. The reliability of data कि भाई सब ठीक है ये वाला ग्राफ, ठीक है? Reliability of data reduces and validity, that is application to Sheetal, increases. Okay? And इसी का उल्टा when you go clockwise. If you go clockwise, then reliability increases and validity decreases. So going back to the original equation, this is the importance of method in the whole package called as research methodology. है ना? Am I clear? That when you say ontology, measure empowerment externally, okay? Because empowerment is measurable, structuralist perspective, ठीक है? So how do I look at that? Ontology external है, तो measurement भी external है. So epistemology क्या है? Seeing is believing. तो seeing क्या था? कि शीतल as income, education, decision making, identity. Method क्या use किया हमने? ये दो methods use किए कि everybody is doing good, so Sheetal is also doing good, है ना? वो logic, Sheetal is also good, everybody educated, A is directly proportional to B, कहाँ गया हमारा? वो मैंने मिटा दिया. So education is empowerment is ability to control your life, तो वो हमारा ठीक है. तो hence methods are this, है ना? So this is it. Ontology, constructivism, no. Life is not observable. It has to be understood in terms of its consequences. Okay. So epistemology, go beyond this graph. Compare Sheetal to Shantabai. And then come on to these two. So I conclude by saying that research methodology is ontology plus epistemology plus methods. And all these three things are related intricately to one another. Thank you so much. I hope it was clear to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for addressing such an interactive and interesting topic. It was of great significance, and I personally feel that I was sitting in a classroom and attending your lecture. And I'm sure that everyone must be feeling the same. And this is very enlightening topic, and the method that you applied. I'm certainly going to take take away some of the examples that you took here. I'm certainly going to use that, borrow that same thing. And to sum up, for our audience, so she talked about ontology, epistemology, and methods, like how what research methodology constitutes. Then she also talked about how nuanced understanding of feminism, gender are, and how how things are of gendered nature. While she also touched upon the history of feminist movement and so on. Thank you so much, ma'am. And with this, I will open the platform for question and answers. So I will just read out some of the questions and for you, if you may, please.
Okay. I do have a query.
Yes, who's asking Apeksha? Yes.
Ma'am, at one place you talked about third wave of feminism. Yeah, so third wave of feminism, you said that it is grounded on my identity. Okay, so what can be the basic protocol which we can just face for estimating that or calculating that feminist epistemology? How we can say that it's a third wave or my identity has been defined? Means, is there any protocol for that or
No,
scale?
No. I understood what you were saying, but protocol is the not right word. You can say criteria to identify कि which wave I am talking about, है ना? अब wave का क्या है कि wave moves on a timeline, ठीक है? Say 100 years back, you were fighting for political right, political recognition, voting right. 50, 60 years back, 70 years back, you were fighting for equal wages, work, organized sector, that and it is not necessary कि आप सिर्फ women की बात कर रहे हो, even some of the men also were fighting for the equal rights and certain other aspects of reality. वो organization और profession और occupation wise होता है. The third wave is more about the people, those who have gone past the first and the second stage. ठीक है ना? आप कभी भी social sciences में the beauty is you never forget. I'm just using my board again. I miss classroom teaching so much. पता है तुम लोग सामने होते ना तो I would have just talked to you for hours together. Board पे समझा. I use board a lot. So everything, suppose from a sociological perspective, tradition है, ये modern पे आया और ये post modern पे पहुंच गया. Now, do you think that the entire communities were traditional, then they became modern and then the postmodern? No. It is the individual units within the communities which have a journey, which is dependent upon the external factors such as education, economic strength, and all these things, your stability, n number of things that you can talk about. So here, people might still be struggling for some of the women, tribal women, for rights. Okay. So हमारी सोसाइटी ने उनको रिजर्वेशन दिया कि भाई women का रिजर्वेशन होना चाहिए पंचायती राज सिस्टम में, political participation 30%, this है ना. For some, the quest for this is over, they have reached here. For others, this is here. And for women in the Western world, they have gone past this, even this. Say women in Sweden and Nordic countries, everything is there. So now it is about the preferences. So it depends upon the timeline where you trace an individual entity and how much is that. And what criteria then is under investigation. So if you talk to me, I have gone past everything in that wo empowerment wala. So where do you put me? In the post-modern way of understanding, because that takes me back to tradition. बिल्कुल ही brutalized हूँ. So यहाँ पे you have to see, देखो, रिसर्च सब चीजों पे नहीं हो सकती. मैं सब कुछ नहीं खा सकता. If you enter क्या कहते हैं ये होटल, रेस्टोरेंट, है ना? So when you enter, you actually have a kind of menu. Can you eat everything? No. You go and decide what you want to eat. है ना? Similarly, you cannot also think कि ये मेरे को तो ये खाना, ये नॉनवेज क्यों बना रहा है? It's not your choice. Reality is a social fact. Durkheim का याद रखना, and menu is a perfect example of that social fact. Reality is external to the individual, endowed with power of coercion, but you have to operate within it. ठीक है? So यहाँ पे नॉनवेज भी मिलेगा, तो पर खाना तो मुझे नहीं है, तो मैं क्यों चाहूंगी ये हट जाए? It will continue to exist. Remember, like marriage, religion, every institution, no matter you like or dislike, it will continue to exist. है ना? Then you have to fit in within that frame. And here, very important, and I tell you one thing, अगर research कर लिया है, guide कर रहे हो या करना है, have only 2 to 3 variables to deal with. आप कितने लोगों से fight कर सकते हो? हिंदी पिक्चर, साउथ इंडियन मूवी तो है नहीं कि 25 एक साथ घूम रहे हैं. Absolutely not. Even not. Deal 2-3 variables जिससे आप fight कर सको. Fight मेरा थोड़ा सा आपको बहुत serious था, इसलिए I'm making it a bit light. Only 3 or 4 variables. And be very, very, very articulate about what you are doing. Articulate तभी हो सकोगे जब you know कि आप कर क्या रहे हो. And if somebody says what is your research question or your hypothesis, वो अलग issue है, कभी बाद में बात करेंगे. If somebody says what is your research question, what is your research all about, if you take more than 3 sentences to explain, that means you do not know what you have done yourself. You are confused. You must be very clear in terms of establishing the relationship between 2 and 3 variables which are under test. So don't bite more than what you can chew. Don't deal with variables more than you can fight. Okay, and be very clear about the causality, correlationality between what you are doing. And that makes my life also simple and your life also simple. है ना? Because there are various types of researches. अगर कभी मौका मिला तो we'll have a session on research, types of researches, research design, limitation of a researcher, what not to do. So वो हम लोग देखेंगे करेंगे, but so far have manageable number of variables and their interplay that is there.
Due to paucity of times, we will not be able to take too many questions because our next session already is due. But I will take one or two questions, ma'am, if you permit. I'm just quoting. This is a question from Khalid Wasim, and I quote, "How we place Saba Mahmood's take on politics of pity, where she argues that resistance is not necessary for exercising the agency. Are we too much depending on liberal traditions to understand feminism?"
Acha. It is also, whose question is this? Khalid.
Khalid.
Khalid, it is also the choice of variables of the researcher. You may not choose resistance as a variable to exercise your agency. Then you suggest how can you, or you have to devise a way, or you have to think a different variable to think about it. Say, for instance, when I started asking you, tell me about how do you measure empowerment? Had I been talking to you one by one, we would have come up only 5-10. But look at the beauty, the group has given almost 100 answers. Okay, that is added to my knowledge also. We are always a learner. Now, this is up to you that even to understand agency, you have to identify a different set of variable, if not resistance. Chalo, isko main, for a while I cut this. Then think about, the group can think about it while I'm giving you an explanation. The data and the understanding of the world reflects a funnel effect. Funnel means this. Okay. So if there are 100 cases of domestic violence, suppose domestic violence, only 90 are identified as actual cases, because 10 ko to pata hi nahi ki domestic violence tha. So you can see the kind of ignorance about taken for granted nature of the world, this. So 90 are identified as actual cases. Out of 90, 10 are settled in the room only between the two individuals. They don't even step out of the room to involve the family. Okay. Other 10 get resolved at the immediate family level, in-laws or within the family or whatever. Another 10 gets settled with the intervention of family and friends. Another 10 move out of that to the arbitrary authorities. 40 get actual registered, out of which 30 get actually identified as cases of domestic violence, and in 20, conviction happens. This is statistics. And this is where you may not use resistance as an expression of agency. You may also use standing with the oppressed as a choice of agency. Not marrying is also a kind of, it may be seen as resistance, but it may be an exercise of my choice. That is why I say that a particular variable can be understood in various ways. So saying yes is not compliance. Saying yes may also be seen as expression of your agency. So the way you want to define this variable, it's like your profile. I look good in this profile, so I send my photo like this. Or you make your CV, whatever you want to highlight for corporate, for education, for this, for social service. It's like how you want to profile your variable and hence operationalize it. Okay. Temperature does not necessarily mean only high temperature. It can be sub-zero also. So variable does not just mean resistance is agency. Agency can also be assertion. Kine mujhe to karna hai, bolo. So the profiling of the variable is very important. Am I clear?
I'll take one more question and we'll give a call. We'll start another session now. So there is another interesting question, and I quote, "There are important epistemological, ontological, and methodological considerations behind any comparative exercise. I therefore I am therefore curious as to just excuse me, as to how you set up a comparison between yourself and the woman you have employed at your home. That is a how question. The second component to my query is why. Why
Yes.
or of what use is it to compare uh, the extent of empowerment in women in different social locations? What sort of feminist epistemology aids in taking seriously these two aspects?
Okay.
The how and why
This
question.
is by Divya. Divya, you have brought out a very interesting question in terms of what kind of entities can be compared. Say, for example, you cannot compare a fish with a bicycle. Okay, you cannot compare oranges with aeroplanes. However, in this case, at least few elements they converge and many of them may diverge. You may say that, when you are talking about comparison between one individual here and the other individual, now both these individuals have a different kind of social setting in which they operate. Okay, and her material and educational and social status is far more different from hers, so hence they are incomparable because they are asymmetrical. However, there are various ways of approaching once again this vantage point questions. We are approaching not now, and this is something observable in terms of its consequences. Okay, and this is where the importance of storytelling comes into existence. The consequences in terms of the experience of what, and this is a deductive approach now we are following. The consequence was both of them were upset because of the experience rooted in what? Domestic violence because of what? Because of the denial because of what? The choice why? Because of the other set of external circumstances. And hence, what are the external circumstances? They are this, that there is a particular demand. This is how you have to understand variable. Variable का आप topical treatment नहीं कर सकते हो. You cannot topically treat variable. And in both the cases, this may not be applied to a fish or a bicycle, but both of them have a speed at least. Okay, they may belong to two entirely different contexts, but we have started our journey, our storytelling on the basis of this, which I deductively bring down to a question of demand. How do women treat demand? And what is their response? What is the response of family to demand? And in that response, what is their response? So this can be the way it can be discerned or broken down to the level of understanding from there. And in feminism particularly, some experiences are worth sharing, common experiences. Say, all of us observing spacecraft going up. Okay, that's external to all of us. All right, spacecraft going up. ठीक है, एक एग्जाम्पल विच इज एब्सोल्युटली एक्सटर्नल. हम सब देखते हैं, वी क्लैप इन ऑ एडमिरेशन, अच्छा ये पहुंच जाएगा, ये ग्रेविटी डिफाइंग एंड ऑल दैट. Second experience, which is now I am coming down to the personal level. Second experience, holding a gym ball in your hand. Okay, second experience. Third, further coming down to the level individual, sitting on a gym ball. All right, you sit on a gym ball and how comfortable you feel. Okay, and then sitting on the gym ball without putting your foot on floor, much more personal. At every stage, no matter what you add from absolutely externally observable fact to something experiencing, the gym ball or the response to a demand or domestic violence, or even something, say, for example, domestic violence or marital rape, whatever you may call, certain cases where comparisons necessarily may not be drawn between two distinct, but it is the question of experience. For agency, like the previous question, you may have a different variable to measure, like temperature. I repeat, the temperature is not necessarily high. It can be 0 or sub-zero also. So the phenomena of agency is not just resistance, it can be assertion also. So you have to see ki kaun sa rukh, what profile of the variable you are using.
Okay. With this, ma'am, I would call this session to an end. So may I request our participants to stick with us for the next session that is starting immediately after this, which will be moderated by my colleague, Mr. Wasim Akbar Baba. And I also I would take this opportunity to congratulate and thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Sheetal, ma'am, for delivering this extraordinary interactive session.
Same here. Ma'am, you just remind me of our classes. Same thing, classroom experience.
Yes.
Missing
Thank
it.
you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much
so
ma'am.
much.
My
And,
only suggestion to all of you, Pratyush, is that you are young faculty members. आप अपनी टीचिंग को ना इफेक्टिव बनाने की चेष्टा करो. You try to become effective in the sense कि बहुत हो गया ज्ञान बांटना, ऊपर बच्चे, I repeat this at the risk of repetition, कि सब अपनी सुविधा अनुसार इंग्लिश, हिंदी, regional languages जानते हैं and they can read it better than you can read it better than me because your English is better than mine, है ना. और अब तो डिक्शनरी उठ के लानी भी नहीं पड़ती, रजाई में से निकल के, it's there on the Google, it's there on the internet, so everybody can read. But the point is to understand. है ना. Philosophers have enough interpreted the world, है ना, but the point is to change it. People have read and they can read depending on their vocation and choice and ability to read. You make them understand that what do they do by this, and by using practical examples. That is why we dread theory. हम लोग physics से क्यों इतना डरते थे? टीचर ने बताया ही नहीं कभी ढंग से, है ना, कि देखो ये थ्योरी ये बुक में नहीं है, ये शेल्फ, ये इसमें वही लिखा है जो हम एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं.
True.
So relate the theory, the teachings to your life, it becomes very easy. That's the lesson. And have energy to deal with students at that level. Thank you.
We are doing it, man. We are trying to incorporate those things, definitely.
Yes,
Our chat box is started with more appreciation comments and congratulatory comments and all. There are so many questions already that have come for you, directed to you, but because of the paucity of time, we are not addressing to you right now. But we will email to you if you take some time of yours and respond us back through email. We will be able to send it across. Okay. And with these words, I would immediately call for the beginning of next session that will be moderated by Mr. Wasim Akbar Baba. So, Wasim sir, over to you.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.